Women there should be so lucky as to get colonized by anybody else.
My one basic problem with this new rule is he seems to be using Western values to justify a violation of Western values. So this is real-time rebuttal, rebutting the new rule rebuttal. And I was always a big fan of this show and Bill Maher's new rules, although in the last few years or so, it really kind of feel like we're diverging in our critique and political perspective.
Finally, new rule for all the progressives and academics who refer to Israel as an outpost of Western civilization like it's a bad thing. Please note, Western civilization is what gave the world pretty much every goddamn liberal precept that liberals are supposed to adore.
A lot of those precepts are not unique to the Western world. We've enshrined a lot of them, which is great, and we try to live by them. They're great ideals, but they're not unique to us. There are records predating Athenian democracy that was the Indus Valley, Mesopotamia. There are records of councils being elected, and who got the vote in those places, who knows? You know what I mean? I'm sure it wasn't everybody. But Athenian democracy was only like 10 or 15% of the population got to vote.
Individual liberty, scientific inquiry, rule of law, religious freedom, women's rights, human rights, democracy, trial by jury, freedom of speech. Please, somebody stop us before we enlighten again.
First of all, I'm in favor of Western values. Let me just make that clear. Individual liberty, scientific inquiry, rule of law, human rights, democracy. Love it. Yeah, love all that stuff. I would like to see more of it. I think we suffer from the powerful, wealthy, elite control way too much. Things he's talking about there, like individual liberty. I mean, in terms of Palestine, the blockades, they're not letting anybody in or out. Been going on for years. And this goes back, when we talk about democracy, in 2006, to George Bush, in the wake of the terrible wars that he started, trying to give this democracy veneer to his foreign policy. They were promoting democracy in Palestine. They had these elections in 2006, and the people voted for Hamas. But, we don't like that. Israel and America didn't like that, and I think Egypt either. So is it democracy or is it not? Do you get to vote for who you want to vote for or not? Apparently, it depends. Scientific inquiry, what are you talking about? Like, as the pandemic just showed, our healthcare policy is being dictated by for-profit corporations. The FDA, the CDC, they're funded by Pfizer, Moderna, a lot of these big pharmaceutical companies. We don't have a universal healthcare system, make sure everybody's covered. So it's not about health, is it? Human rights, the human rights abuses are going on because of the blockades. His list sounds good, but in practice, it's not really what's happening.
And since one can find all these concepts in today's Israel and virtually nowhere else in the Middle East, if anything, the world would be a better place if it had more Israels. Of course, this message falls on deaf ears to the current crop who reduce everything to being only victims or victimizers, so Israel is lumped in as the toxic fruit of the victimizing West.
Well, if the toxic fruit hat fits, you get lumped in with people committing atrocities when you commit atrocities. You're being lumped in with toxic elements when you're, exhibiting toxic behavior. That's how it should be. You're guilty of that. You gotta wear the hat of that. It's not trying to say, oh, you're just getting lumped in with the toxic colonizers. Whether or not they colonized, they're the ones in power, and they're perpetuating this power. This is another point. This is putting Israelis at risk. This is putting Israeli people at risk. English people and people lived in London that suffered under the IRA bombing campaign, that buck stopped with the British government because the British government were the ones in power. They were the dominant power. They were the ones who had the ability to fix things in Northern Ireland. They chose not to. And again, this is resources. Resources could fix that for housing, for employment opportunity, for education. When people are living like second-class citizens, they're going to form toxic groups, terrorist groups, freedom fighter groups, whatever way you want to put it. When the system doesn't serve people, they're going to seek to overthrow it. And that's what we're heading toward in America, actually, by the way. Richest country in human history, and we don't have health care after a pandemic. Look at the IRA, look at FARC, look at Basque ETA, look at the PLO, look at Hamas. Anywhere in the world where a system doesn't serve the people will form groups that will seek to overthrow that system. They will organize and arm themselves. Side note, in America, we're already armed.
Yes, that's how simple the woke are. It's never about ideas.
What he's trying to do is equate woke with people that are against apartheid and people that are against genocide, okay? Do you buy that? Are you going to buy? You might if you think woke is left, but woke is not left. I did a video on this. In 2000, I'll sum up briefly. In 2015, there was a real leftist movement burgeoning, beginning to grow in the United States, centered around living wages and healthcare, two real basic leftist issues. The establishment panicked, threw a Molotov woke tail at that, and effectively destroyed it. Now the left seems to be people talking about pronouns and pregnant men and 1619 Project and whose land are we standing on, whose stolen ground are we standing on. None of it has to do with actually improving the material lives of people living today. Does it? Doesn't have to do with a UBI. They could afford to give us a UBI too. Don't get mistaken. Don't get it. And there's another study you need to learn. There's another video I did on this. $50 trillion has been stolen from the American people over the last 40 years by the wealthy elite. You're owed a UBI. Public banking would help. Universal health care, affordable housing. Woke was used by the establishment to make the left seem radioactive. They have toxified the left for another generation. If you think woke is left, you've been indoctrinated. And I don't blame you because they're pushing this constantly, and he's another one doing it, either consciously or unconsciously. It's in the media. The 3 lies, I did a video on this, the 3 major lies that the mainstream media is pushing on you. The country's divided, America's a democracy, and woke is left. They're constantly repeating these 3 lies. Country's not divided. Most of us agree on almost every major issue. It's been shown in a major study that America is not a democracy. We don't get what we want, and woke is not left. This woke stuff toxifies the left and helps to entrench in the establishment, which is pretty far right wing because it's corporations that influence our domestic and foreign policy.
If it was, would they be cheering on Hamas for their liberation? Liberation? To do what? More freely preside over a country where there are no laws against sexual harassment, spousal rape, domestic violence, homophobia, honor killings, or child marriage? This is who liberals think you should stand with?
So nobody's advocating standing with people who do honor killings or spousal abuse or keep women as second-class citizens or child marriages or whatever he's saying. He's doing the straw man argument of taking the extreme position, and sometimes it's not even the extreme position. A lot of the stuff he's talking about there that's not good, like suppression of women, homophobia, honor killings, blah, 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 child marriage. This is human being stuff. This is all of planet Earth for most of history has been that. All the prejudices, all the hatreds, all this rape, murder, homophobia, that's been all throughout our history. It's recent that we're seeing progress in these areas. And America has been a place of that. And it's true. I agree with a lot of what he says of people hating on America, but there's been a lot of progress here in this country. On the other hand, there are things we have to address and acknowledge, and we have done some lousy things as well. But to say that he's doing this thing that he called out conservatives for back after 9/11, people that were in favor of invading Iraq, and that if you weren't with the invasion, then you were with the terrorists. It's taking this extreme straw man point of view of saying you must be in favor of all the worst possible things. Like for what he's saying, basically, if you don't agree with Israel should be able to bomb people in tents, then you're in favor of spousal abuse and homophobia and what he's calling non-Western values. Nobody's calling for that. We're standing with people that are being oppressed, like black people in South Africa, like Catholics or nationalists in Northern Ireland, people that have been kept down, living as second-class citizens, living in an apartheid state. That's what we're against. What he's doing is using Western values to rationalize a violation of Western values. It's crazy. I mean, he's literally doing the thing that he was mad about conservatives doing during the Iraq War. And saying, oh, well, if you're not with us, then you're with the terrorists. Nobody's standing with spousal abusers or homophobia. People are standing with people that are oppressed.
The ideas that came through Athens, Rome, London, Paris, and yes, Philadelphia, are what make life good for most people in free societies today. That the individuals have value, and even the powers that be must submit to the rule of law.
Rule of law? Powers that be are not held accountable. They're writing what the laws are.
Women there should be so lucky as to get colonized by anybody else.
It really shows how far he's come. I remember in this show, it used to be, the position of the left was being against regime change wars, against wars of choice. And it seems now you weren't just invading people and killing people because you didn't agree with them or what their outlook culturally was in the world or politically, the preemptive wars. That was considered wrong. And now he's completely changed and seems to be saying, well, this is okay what you do to these people because we don't agree with them culturally or what their perspectives are. And again, I don't know that that's true. I'm taking his argument at face value. But he's changed a lot. He's completely come around to become the conservative that he used to say he hated. My one basic problem with this new rule is he seems to be using Western values to justify a violation of Western values. We've got great values, so we can do whatever we want. You should be lucky to be colonized by...
Women there should be so lucky as to get colonized by anybody else.
What a line that was. Be lucky to be colonized by this culture. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Must suck to be on the short end of the civilization stick, Palestine, because you're going to be colonized by such a great civilization. If it's really great, the values of it would be helping the people that are in need, that are in Palestine. Those values would be influencing more positive policy towards that area and the people there. Not being like, hey, you know what? They're going to like run roughshod over you because, you know, it's a genocide of love. Because we're the better civilization. We have the better outlook. And of course, everybody says that who's ever, the powers that be always say that. You're lucky to be here with the king. You're lucky to be here with the pharaoh. You're lucky to be here with this military junta. They're benevolent and they're doing well for you. Everybody says that the ones on top are going to say that it's good. He's not advocating for healthcare or affordable housing for American citizens. He's talking about, you know, Trump, this political theater where the policies aren't really affecting regular people. Go back to the Gillens and Page, the 2014 Princeton study that showed that America is not a democracy. 80% of the population has zero influence on policy. He's not talking about that anymore. Yeah, it's like they know there's a big meteor coming or something, and why give people health care or affordable housing or anything? They're going to get hit by a meteor anyway. Or I don't know what his position is, like the corporations own everything and run everything, and there's just nothing you can do about it, so let's talk about Trump and the political theater that doesn't really affect your lives because you people have tuned out and have abdicated control to the wealthy elite. I don't know. He really definitely, it seems to be like a trend I've seen with people as I'm getting older, and the older generation get older, people I knew that were like kind of had some left tendencies are now completely right-wing. And some of them will call themselves Democrats still, or liberals, but their positions are like, they're supporting candidates that are anti-labor, pro-war, you're not getting police reform, you're not getting any of the things that people want. So I don't know. Thanks for clicking in. See you in the next video.
Women there should be so lucky as to get colonized by anybody else.